That's one way to get it. Hey, it worked. Oh my gosh, you did it. Uh-huh.
Now I'm back on. Okay.
That's
It's
great.
my magnetic personality.
I figured that out all the way up.
It's like. So we're here.
Got a quorum.
You got a quorum, yeah. I'd like to call the October 6th, 2021 meeting of the Fraser Board of Trustees and the Housing Authority. We're having a meeting within a meeting to order at 6 p.m. Let's do roll call.
Andy Miller.
Brian Zerkwinnik.
Katie Souls. Eileen Waldo. And now for the approval of the agenda. So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The consent agenda, which includes the minutes of the September 15th meeting.
I
So-
move to approve the consent agenda.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And now let's move on to the discussion and possible action regarding, the first item is the Fraser Mural Festival update. And Steve Fitzgerald is on. Hi, Steve.
Good evening, everybody. How you doing?
Good.
Greetings from Jackson Hole. Sorry I couldn't be with you tonight, but I had some business that brought me up here. It's not as good as it sounds. I have spent most of the day indoor the last 3 or 4 days, and now that I have free time, it's going to snow. So thank you for making time. My purpose here tonight is really informational, to share with you the progress that the PAC and Fraser Valley Arts, the nonprofit, have made this year. I'll only take about 5 minutes of your time. Happy to answer any questions, but I wanted to give you a bit of an update by way of just kind of closing the circle on things we talked about earlier in the year. So the first item on the list is, of course, the Mural Festival. And I think most of you, attended. I think I saw just about every single one of you there in early August. We had what I think is generally acknowledged to be the best of the 3 festivals that we've had. Very strong visitation, particularly on Saturday, despite the smoke and some of the cool weather in the morning. And that visitation it continued somewhat into Sunday, which we were pleased with, because that's one of our goals, is to build better into Sunday for the purposes of economic development in the town. We had over 80 applicants this year, which is about 4 times what we've had in the past. Chose 25 artists. Rafael Blanco, who I think many of you got a chance to see, who did the Nurse mural, was our grand prize winner in the sense that he won the mural commission. And I'm sure you've noticed on Fisher's Bar, the mural he has subsequently painted commemorating the logging history of our area. So all in all, we're very pleased with both the artistic side of that, the visitation side of it. And then the third thing that I'm particularly pleased with is that we raised over $10,000 this year net for the Fraser Center, and put that into the Fraser Valley Arts coffers. And that's more than double the first 2 mural festivals combined.
That's awesome.
So very good traction on the Mural Festival. Mural Festival 22 is scheduled for August the 5th and the 6th. And we will be doing some planning in the PAC in coming meetings. We welcome your insights and your thoughts. One of our big goals, as I said earlier, is to continue to build into Sunday so that we have that strong visitation that goes over 2 days. So that's the Mural Festival. Let me just pause there and see if there's any comments or questions that you might have, because that's a big event. All right, going twice.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's
we're
awesome.
pleased. We're pleased. And I'll tell you, the PAC puts in a ton of work, particularly Eric, on this effort. And it's all volunteer. So when you see those folks, please express your congratulations to them as well. 2 other events that are happening or happened. One is we took a bit of a flyer, if you will, just a few weeks ago on a thing called the Artisan Oktoberfest, and worked with the 5 breweries in Winter Park and Fraser to couple artists with the Oktoberfest celebration. And what happened is that as the Oktoberfest event went on in each of the breweries, there were local artists, and the whole idea here was to promote the local art scene and help especially emerging artists with a relatively low risk way of promoting themselves. And we had spotty results, I will say. It wasn't intended to be a fundraiser. We had some artists who had virtually no interest or interaction, and we had a couple of others who had quite a bit. So we're going to reconsider that at an upcoming meeting. We're certain that the Oktoberfest itself goes forward. I think Sarah would concur with that. But how we integrate the artistic side and whether we do that, we're not sure, with one exception, and that is for next year, we are planning to have unique commemorative steins that will be available for purchase, and a good chunk of the proceeds would go to the Fraser Center fundraising effort, and they will be designed by a local artist, and we'll put out a call for entries for that. And then the third thing I would point at to let you know is that we are taking a hard look, including in the next PAC meeting this month, at a winter event. I will whet your appetite to say that the tentative name is Fraser Fire and Ice. And it's intended to kind of capture the irreverent, funky spirit of our community in the winter months and celebrate in a unique way. So more details to come on that, but it's one that we're kind of excited about, and I actually think could be a great deal of fun. The last thing I wanted to share with you is not a PAC effort. As you know, Fraser Valley Arts is the 501c3 that we launched this year. And as it was pretty hard to miss because we had tons of help from the town in promoting it, but we held plein air at altitude just a few weeks ago, the week after Labor Day. And what that was is we had 22 artists in town who were painting over the course of a week. They produced 80 paintings, of which almost 60 are already sold. And they all celebrated the beauty of our community. The only rule in terms of painting is it had to be from Grand County and it had to be during that week. We had over 100 paid people at our Friday night fundraiser, and hundreds more at the free event on Sunday, where we also had a display of the Fraser Center and our other plans for the future. And I got to tell you, there was just a ton of interest in that vision and enthusiasm for accomplishing that. The really good news is that in its very first year, plein air at altitude, which is primary intent of that is to both establish credibility for the organization and to raise money for the Fraser Center, we raised more than we raised in the Mural Festival. The paintings are still on sale, will be through the end of this week. So the final ledger is not in, but we will be north of that $10,000 or so that I mentioned from the Mural Festival this year. So all in all, a very good year from an event point of view. And perhaps more importantly, I feel like we've laid the foundation for what comes next, which is the actual capital campaign to start to very actively go after grants, donations, et cetera, in pursuit of our vision of a creative center for the town. So let me stop there and see if you have any comments, questions, or suggestions.
So are your funds going to be focused on the center? Are they going to start with the addition on the church? What's the
Yeah,
game
that's a
plan?
bit of a $64,000 question. We just
Not that
got
much money.
we just got actually about a $4 to $6 million question. We just got the documents, as you know, from DA Architecture and the church. And to be fair to Ed and the staff there, we haven't yet had a chance to sit down and work our way through them. We're doing that next week. And it's our intention to come back to the board with a thesis about how we should proceed and what should be our focus. But that hasn't happened yet.
Okay, great.
Well, I just want to say thank you for all the work you've done, and have to say, as a business owner, I really noticed the amount of business coming through. The Mural Fest was actually great for business this year. Had a lot of people that were there eating and drinking after the festival and stuff like that. And also the mural. It's so beautiful. I love it
Yeah, it is. a
so
great
much.
mural.
It's so awesome. Raphael was such a nice guy.
He is a prince.
He did so well. He did it in 3 days. I mean, awesome. Thank you so much. It was great.
Yep. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I mean, we absolutely want to see the businesses in our community prosper as we do these things. That is absolutely a goal. And frankly, from my point of view, I just get a kick out of riding my bike through town and seeing murals like the one there is now on the side of your bar, because they're arresting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all I have. Thank you, as always, for your support. It is budget season. We are formulating our budget. And so I will tell you that we are intending to double down on the Mural Festival and some of these other things. And you can look forward to seeing our proposal at the appropriate time. Thank you for your attention.
And thank you for your great leadership.
Yeah, good job.
Yeah, thanks,
Thank
Steve.
you, Steve.
My pleasure.
For all your hard work, Steve.
You betcha.
Okay, now we will go to resolution 2021-1001, Joint Facilities Fund amended budget with Beth on board. What is that?
We can't hear you at all. You have no microphone. Or a microphone.
Sorry, we're ready for Beth? Okay, Beth, you're on.
Hi.
Hi, Beth.
For those of you who are at the JFOC meeting, I brought this to them to amend the budget. When we did the budget last year for Fund 50, the Nutrients Fund, we didn't budget for it. We left it all zeros because we weren't sure on the expenses with that account. So that's the only part of the JFF budget that's being amended right now is Fund 50. And as you can see, there's estimated expenses through there. And then I did the calculation. Those expenses are going to be paid with JFF 60%, and then Northern's paying 40%. So in the revenue area, I did a calculation to figure out what each entity is paying based on their capital reserve percentages, and then Northern's part. And you can see that it's like 265,000 around there. I don't have it in front of me. And then the revenue matches the expenses. So that's what this is for. And we need to do that before the end of the year. So I thought this is a good time to amend it and send it off to DOLA.
Oh, any questions?
So where does it come out of in the budget? Because is it that 200? 65, 335. Where does that
Yes.
come from? I didn't understand that.
It's all the expenses equal, that number, the year-end estimate for the year.
Right, but is
And
that the increase in our budget amount?
yeah, that's the increase for the JFF budget. Yes.
Those two are the same amount.
What am I supposed to do this?
These are not- okay, so they have the same volume, right?
Is that your
I'm
family?
bringing,
What difference is-
Okay,
yeah, they're doing homework. I'm sorry.
oh, that's okay. That's okay.
I am bringing it up right now.
Yeah.
The budget on my computer.
Thank you. I'm just wondering what, so it's increased that, but how are we paying for those funds if it's not budgeted?
Each of the districts went back and they approved that they were gonna pay. So like Winter Park Ranch, they will be increasing their budget about 35,000. Ours for the town will be 38,500 if all of those expenses do happen for the year. And then we will be paying that out of our wastewater fund.
Okay,
The wastewater fund, we won't go over budget on that for the town just because it's a pretty flush fund. So I'm not too worried about going in the red on that for $39,000. But on page 3 at the top, that's where all those revenues are and they match the expenses down below.
okay.
So. And then on page 4, there is an increase for the management fee, which will be shared with Northern as well. And in the 2022 budget, I also increased the management fee for JFF just because it should have been probably increased a couple years ago, but
Okay.
based on like increases in salaries and the expenses and stuff, we've raised it a little bit, the management fee. So we'll be getting a little bit more money from Winter Park Ranch, Grant County #1 and Northern to do all the accounting for this fund.
So Northern's participation is because part of this expenses is because of Project P, or?
Yes, this whole fund is the expenses for Project P. And we're actually going to pay the last final app for that project this week. So once that gets paid, I will be billing all the entities for some of the expenses that have occurred so far this year in Fund 50.
Northern's, what's Northern's portion then?
40%.
40%. That's
Yep.
over and above the initial, what was it? They gave us a lump sum at the beginning of the project, right?
Yeah, that was just to do the project itself. And then per the agreement that was signed, they will going forward. I think maybe I think the agreement's for 20 years that they will continue paying 40%.
Yeah, portion of the, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So this is the increase in cost to run that part of the plant, basically.
Yes. Yep.
So Beth, do we need to have the town of Fraser's the dollar amount that we are participating in, or that we're putting into this increase in this resolution? You said 38,500. I don't know if there's more on that or if that's necessary, because there's nothing here that reflects that, unless I guess you really went through the budget.
Oh, I'm just recalling a resolution. We have to have the whole dollar amount. So like, and hopefully before Thanksgiving, we will be approving the town budget, or you guys will be approving the town budget. And then there's resolutions, and it says what the whole entire revenues are and expenses are for the joint facility fund. So the resolution is correct. It needs to say the whole amount of revenues that we're expecting to offset those expenses.
Thank you.
So does that mean we need to change the resolution?
No.
No,
Okay.
it's good.
So is anyone want to move on the resolution?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number, I gotta go back a page, here, 2021-1001. Colorado Joint Facilities Fund increase.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution passes. Now, we're going to deal with resolution 2021-1002, approving land acquisition policy, which Ed will advise us on.
Thank you, Eileen. This is a pretty simple policy. It ties in with our search to find land for affordable housing options here in Fraser. It basically captures the idea that I could act as an agent of the town to go out and make an offer on properties, subject again to the Board of Trustees approval, and allows us to move quickly on properties as they come available, or maybe take advantage of some strategic opportunities that we have. We've got a couple of criteria here that we are just kind of general. Mainly, we're looking for land that is close to Fraser or contiguous, so that has a reasonable possibility of annexation in the future.
Or in Fraser, so.
Or in Fraser,
Yep.
where we don't have to annex.
Yeah.
We're looking for close proximity to water and sewer infrastructure as well. There's a couple of other criteria which we pulled out, but it's kind of a guiding rule of thumb that I'll be operating under this. We're looking for land that can accommodate up to about 6 housing units, affordable housing units. So, half acre properties may not be able to fit that in. 2, 3, 15 acre properties, you can actually get 6 or more quite easily there. We're also trying to find land along the target range of about $75,000 per unit of what it's capable of supporting. Of course, that's just a target. Some prices may come in low, some may come in higher than that. But again, we just want to have the ability to allow me to go out and make those offers. Again, any offer I make would be subject to the Board of Trustees granting final approval to execute that contract. So I'm
Allows
open
us to
for any
move
questions.
quickly, basically.
It does
Yeah,
allow us to
yeah.
move quickly.
Right.
I have a question about the size of the lots we're gonna go after. I mean, you eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? I mean, as long as the percentages fill or work out, why wouldn't we go after a smaller property if we could put 2 on it? Instead of, if the percentages were gonna sell 75,000 a unit, then I don't see why we wouldn't go after something smaller and just put a smaller housing unit on it. Because every little bit helps,
Again, I'm not tied to those other 2 conditions that I
Okay.
mentioned. These are just kind of some targets that I'm looking for.
Okay,
And those targets are really to give some assurances to the Board of Trustees that I'm not going to go out and make an offer on a
Right.
$30 million 1 acre lot, just.
I got you.
you know.
Yeah, but we want to look at those still.
Oh, yes, we've
Be
got,
open to the smaller pieces.
we still have a list of those properties that were identified that are either for sale now, or that we've heard that the owners may be willing to negotiate with
Right,
us.
okay. Cool.
But we also are looking at larger tracts of land as well.
Mhm.
So 30, 40, 140 acres tracts of land as well that we're exploring. So we've got a wide range of possibilities. Again, this just gives me the authority to go out there and
Right,
make an offer.
I think we've missed out on some properties already, just
because we couldn't move fast enough. And this is a zero risk policy. You know, he can go out and make an offer and we can turn it down if we want to. So I think it makes really good sense with no risk to the town.
So Parnell, just to understand a little better, making an offer on real estate, there's no cost to that, or?
Nope. Nope, you don't. If you don't use a broker, sometimes you can get a discount on the price just a little bit if you negotiate the commission down if you want.
Right.
Some brokers will do it, some won't. If it's not listed property, then you're not paying a brokerage commission, so you can save anywhere from 3 to 10%.
And you
So-
make an offer, you don't tie it up, obviously. If somebody comes in and makes a higher offer.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can make an offer contingent upon board approval, so the guy can't go do that.
Yeah.
The person, I shouldn't say guy, the person that you're negotiating with can't flip to another person and say, oh, I got this offer, would you beat it? So you can set up a contract, so it's contingent upon us approving the contract. And you want to be quick about it, right? So we might have special meetings. You don't want to hold people up for weeks or days or months at a time, so.
Give an example. When I was in Wellington, I heard of a piece of property that was close to our downtown, close to one of our parks, and it has some very strategic value for the town. We didn't have a land acquisition policy at the time, but I made an offer on the property anyway. And I offered them basically $1,000 above their highest offer, subject to the board approval. Took it back to the Board of Trustees. We found out that I think the offer was somewhere around the $240,000 mark, which was extremely reasonable for property in our downtown. There was only one other bid that came in, and of course, the board approved it. We paid an extra $1,000 when we got the property. And right now, the town is converting that to a new town hall. So
All right.
And hopefully they're using the old town hall for housing.
Well, I move to approve resolution 2021-1002, approving land acquisition policy.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Go get it.
Get it, Ed.
sharpen my pencil.
Now we move on to resolution 2021-1003, adopting an MOU for the Grand County Drought Preparedness Plan. Back to Ed.
Thank you again. All of you have had a chance to review this plan. I don't want to go through the detail of it because it's pretty involved. I'll hit some of the highlights. This is an initiative that started by the county. It's a countywide drought preparedness plan. It's based on science where they have key indicators which will trigger certain responses within the county. It's more of an educational plan more than a regulatory plan. The municipalities, and there's 10 municipalities so far that have signed the MOU to accept the drought plan. Fraser, if we adopt this tonight, we have the discretion on how we choose to actually execute and use the plan. The plan has got some great elements, in my opinion. It includes those indicators and triggers, which will cause the drought committee at the county level to take us through various stages. And those stages are basically routine operations, which is your day-to-day operations. There could be a drought watch if the indicators trigger that we could be moving into a drought situation. And then there's a stage 1 warning, stage 2 severe warning, and stage 3 is an exceptional warning. And each one of these stages has different indicators of responses or suggested responses. I don't want to call them responses. They are suggested responses because every municipality can determine how they want to do these. Most of this is just pretty much common sense. Don't water during stage 1, or if you only water once a week. Don't wash your car outside. I mean, these are basic water conservation efforts that are in place. That decision about taking through the stages, again, it comes from the Drought Preparedness Committee. There's also a committee that's dedicated to public information. And they provide flyers, posters, suggested communications, press release, media, and so forth. It is a voluntary program. We do not have to accept this. However, this is in my opinion, a good. It does cover some of the basic elements. This is a plan that keeps us from having to write our own plan. In other words, she decided to this resolution, which authorized the MOU. Board at that point.
So I took part in a whole series of meetings over the last year or more. Not 10 municipalities, only 6 of us in the county, but it also water districts, anybody that has a authority with water. So the reason I struggle with it, it's a good plan, but the two biggest water, the east slope diverters, are really not. Sure took somewhat of a role in this, but it's I mean where most of our water is going, and most of the impact during a drought is not well addressed in this. So there's a couple of historic reasons for that, and a couple of reasons why we struggled with it. Number one, that we've had several instances where we're in a drought and Denver is not, and they continue to take water without recognizing what's going on this side of the divide. They're two different climates, obviously. And so we wanted some ways to notify Denver, and there's some ways that this can help improve communication, but it would have been good to have brought them along. Now, one of the main reasons this was done was because we asked Denver to take a more aggressive stance in times of drought as far as diversions go. And Denver came back to us and said, well, you guys don't take any action when it comes to drought. So this is an answer to that. You know, this is a real effort by all the communities up here and water users outside of agriculture to address that. So I think it's a good starting point, but honestly, it's in many ways a feel-good document. You know, it's almost saying, well, you're in a drought, don't drink a glass of water, but Denver, go ahead and keep water in your golf courses. And it's just, you know, it's the reality of the situation, but it's at least a beginning step in trying to change the conversation and really getting all of us in the state to recognize that we're in this climate emergency together. And until we do that, I think we're going to have we're going to continue to really struggle with our waters up here. I just learned within the last few days that, I don't know if you guys know what sculpin are. It's a small fish, a little larger than a minnow, I guess. Very prehistoric looking, I guess. And the sculpin population in the Fraser River is taking a crash. And it's one of the main food sources for trout, for brown trout especially. So so there's just a lot of work we've got to do with our watershed, and this is one fairly small step, but it's a step. It's got everybody at the table. These were big meetings. There were up to 30 of us in the room at times during this drafting, and Kirk Clanky has been key to this. He and a small group now are the committee that meet to see if these indicators have been met. And that's a real strong part of the document. As Ed noted, it's a way for us to determine if we're in drought or not. And then we at least gives us a stronger voice to go to Denver and say, we're in a lot of trouble over here. Can you guys tone back the diversions and work with us? And so it gives us a bigger voice. So I have struggled whether to vote for it or not. And I will vote for it tonight because I think it's a good first step. But I do want us to recognize that we've got to keep going down this often tough path to trying to make this watershed work. It's going to be a tremendous challenge going forth into the future. So Adam was our town representative, though I should know, on this effort. So I was representing the Upper Colorado River Watershed Group as I went to those meetings. But of course, I wanted to bring a message back to the town, and I always am thinking of Fraser, of course, but Adam was our staff member that was in charge of participation in this effort. So
Great message too, because that's something I never thought of. With that, like Denver not really being aware, you know.
yeah,
I never really thought of that. Reading this stuff, I was just like, okay, you know.
Well, you also gotta get
Makes sense.
Denver and the people that do the water rights law to change the way the laws work. Because if you don't use your water right, you lose it. So the reason you see them using it down on the Front Range is if they don't use it, they can lose their water right to the person above them.
Well,
So
yeah.
that's one of the
although,
biggest issues with water.
Although Kirk managed to get the state, we have a state statute now called for beneficial use of water too, that helps, if you want to release your water right downstream to benefit the stream, you can do that with notice to the state engineer. And it's a fairly nuanced statute, but Kirk helped push that through the state legislature a few years ago. So we're working on that. There is regulatory work being done on that, but you're right, Parnell.
Right.
It's a use it or lose it type routine that doesn't benefit the streams at all. So, and I think the state's really beginning to recognize that. That's another part of the conversation that we've got to really help drive,
Right.
is that it is of a benefit to allow your water to go downstream. So
Or make more reservoirs and ponds.
what's that?
Make more reservoirs and ponds. One or
Yeah,
the
although
other.
that's a double-edged sword too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an evaporative problem and a warming problem with these two. So,
Evaporates a lot less up here.
yeah, but it warms a lot up here too, though. So, although beaver ponds, it's interesting, they actually cool the water.
Right.
So, yeah, it's ongoing science here, how we managed to run a watershed on about 20% of the water that should be here, basically, is what it all boils down to. So,
Well, I appreciate all the work that went into this big undertaking and believe in how necessary it is, but I believe it falls short in its promotion of producing healthy soil for the prevention and reversal of drought. There is no emphasis on compost, permaculture, managed grazing, cover crops, which have been shown to reverse desertification. It retains the moisture when it does come. On page 37, it talks about landscape revival as the drought ebbs by suggesting alternative turfs. I don't think we should wait any longer to educate on alternatives or regenerative methods. 2/3 of the Earth's land is droughting or just becoming a desert. Time is not on our side. And I think that message has to be stronger in this document.
and Eileen, I think, it's obvious that, well, most of the stats show that about 80% of our water goes to agriculture. And agriculture is going to face tremendous challenges to continue to do business. And I hope that the whole public sector supports that, and financially too, as they begin to transition towards ways that you're talking about, greenhouses. I mean, Holland is that National Geographic article several months ago. Holland is the second largest food exporter in the world. And at that little tiny country,
tiny.
and it's because of greenhouses. And that's a pretty much zero water consumptive use. Israel's famous for this too, for drip irrigation. But that kind of infrastructure for agriculture is going to be expensive. And that sector can't, it's another thing that we need to invest in to help somehow work with this new climate. And your ideas of permaculture and composting and soil building up are fairly low cost ways to
And
really improve
rapid
water.
production.
Yeah,
and the
exactly. Yeah,
rapid turnaround.
yeah. So this is supposed to be an organic document. So that was the input through the whole process. So those are things that should be added into it. So that as revisions. So
How will they be added in and how
Um,
fast?
we'll
Because
talk to Kurt.
at this, I'm
Yeah.
set to vote against it.
Yeah.
Until I see some changes in the
Yeah.
document as it is.
Yeah, I struggle with that too, but I'll vote for it because I think it's a first step. And I did really have the impression through this working group and through the ranchers that did take part in it, that they know the road we're headed down, and they're going to be the ones that are feeling the biggest impact. So.
Okay, any other discussion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 2021-1003. MOU for Grand County Drought Management Plan.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Okay, now we move on to our fun item of the year, the budget. Ed?
It seems to be the Ed show tonight. Just as a reminder, Colorado statutes require that a preliminary budget be presented to the governing body prior to the October 15th of each year. That's the purpose of tonight's meeting, to present the preliminary budget. The preliminary budget does not require any kind of approval by the Board of Trustees. It is a starting point. It's not a working document at this point. If there's changes to be made, we'll be discussing those through 3 budget work sessions on October 20th, November the 3rd, and November the 17th. Right now, we're hopeful to have a budget hearing scheduled for November the 17th, and we use December the 1st as a backup date. This will be the public hearing to approve the budget, to pass the appropriation resolution, and also to certify our tax levy at that time. Some general assumptions under this preliminary budget. First of all, we'll talk about personnel costs. We adjusted those costs by 5.5%. That includes a 3.5 cost of living increase, which is tied to the Denver CPI index. And we also threw in a 2% merit increase. This is very similar to what we've done in the past. We typically in that preliminary budget will budget 5% for salary increases just as a working number. But with cost of living being what it is, we added an extra 0.5%.
So could we ask questions to go along? or-
Sure.
So that was one we keyed in on. Is this going to be enough to fill up our gardening department next summer and at least get some help for Catherine and other departments and public works?
I don't think it's a money problem.
You don't
with-
think so?
With recruiting, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about what those budget workshop topics are going to be.
Sure,
That
okay.
includes retention and recruiting
Right.
and some of our incentive plans that we want to introduce next
Mhm.
year
Okay.
to help us with finding the talent that we need.
Right.
Here.
Okay.
Capital expenditures, also, there's about $4.7 million across all the funds, both the general fund and also our enterprise funds. So a quick overview, the general fund, we're expecting new revenues of 4.9 million with an unassigned fund balance transfer of 2.8, giving us a total revenue of 7.7 million. Our expenditures are expected to be 6.6 million based on the preliminary budget. Major expenditures include 682,000 for the police department. And we are also budgeting an extra $750,000 for community housing again this year. Under the restricted revenue fund, that's the 1% sales tax. Revenues are coming in at about 1.1 million, with expenditures of 900,000. We are seeing approximately that number. It's about a 15% increase over 2021 that we're expecting to see.
Could you give us the line numbers? as we're
Oh.
talking about?
I'm just kind of giving you kind of an executive
Okay.
summary here, because when you look at the restricted revenue fund, that's going to be on page 5 of the document. The next fund is the capital. I'm not going to hit every single fund. I'm going to skip over the Conservation Trust Fund because it's fairly healthy. But the Capital Equipment Replacement Fund, we're showing revenues which are predominantly transfers and also the highway use tax of 326,000, but we have 765,000 in expenditures. And that includes $450,000 for heavy equipment purchases and another 140,000 for fleet purchases. We're also looking at evaluating lease and or financing options for those so we can keep that that cost down and just spread that over several years. On page 7, the capital asset fund, we have 550,000 in revenues and 1.3 million in expenditures. And again, we have $700,000 for street projects, and there's a proposal that was placed by Public Works for $600,000 for a whistleless crossing at the railroad tracks here on Eisenhower. These are things that we'll be talking about in the budget work session, about setting priorities and about whether or not we want to do that this year or put that off. Under our enterprise funds, the water fund, we have 2.5 million in revenues, expenditures of 2.4. We have several capital projects, which I'd be happy to go over with you on that. And the wastewater fund, which is probably our healthiest fund, that came up when we talked about the joint facility budget. Our revenues are looking at 5.8 million with expenditures of 1.3. Some of the trends that we see on this year's budget, property taxes are budgeted for, expected at $575,735. If you look at the budget from 2021, that's about a 64% increase over 2021. Just to let you know what that is, our actual property taxes will be about 443,000, but we also have 132,000, which is part of an exempt business personal property reimbursement that will be coming from the county. So together that brings that those revenues to 575,000. Our sales taxes are generating 3.2 million. And again, that's a 15% increase over 2021. And some of the topics that we want to talk about in the budget workshops. We want to talk about our capital expenditure priorities. We've talked about some that are pretty high priced. The whistleless crossing is one that I think we need to get some direction on from the board, if whether or not that's should be a priority now, or should we stick to those priorities that we talked about 3 months ago when we had our work session. Need to work on balancing the capital equipment replacement fund and also the capital asset fund. Both of those are in the red right now. And again, it's about setting priorities for what we want to, what the board is willing to spend in 2022. The lease financing options, we should have some answers by one of our work sessions. I'd like to talk again about community housing. The allocation in 2021 was $750,000. As you recall, that was our #1 priority when we had our priority work session a couple of months ago. We projected another $750,000 to go to that fund as well this year. During 2022, we are going to be making a lot of moves with Winter Park on creating that regional housing authority. The steering committee that we talked about with Keith Riesberg, AJ, myself, and Michael. We're going to be scheduling meetings. Can't do it next week, but probably the week after we'll have our first meetings and start doing some planning on that regional housing authority. Because we've got some timelines, if that's the direction we go, we've got some timelines to get that in the budget, to understand what our housing needs are and so forth. Need to talk about church renovations. That's going to come up in 2 weeks in our next board meeting. It's got a big price tag, just to let you know, but we're going to talk about that. We're going to also talk about personnel vacancies, our recruitment and retention incentives, some of the ideas that staff is kicking around to see if we can't find better ways to keep people from leaving. And we don't have a great amount of turnover in the organization, at least that I haven't seen in the past couple of months. But the retention or the recruitment is a challenge. It's a challenge. We could not find any seasonal workers this past year. I don't expect us to find seasonal workers next year, so we have to find some solutions to how we can get our landscaping done. We also have 6 vacancies right now within the organization. One of those vacancies has been open for 14 months. It's a high-level superintendent's job, and we just simply can't find people willing to move to the valley. So we're going to explore some different initiatives and incentives that we've been discussing. And there's others possible 2020 initiatives that I would like to get the board's position on. For example, our comp plan, our consolidated land use plan, we have not updated that in about 11 years. It is overdue. Realistically, they should be updated about every 5 to 6 years. We need to look at the inflow and infiltration in our existing sewer systems. There are monies available in our wastewater fund, which includes the collection system. So we might be able to fund a study so that we can start addressing some of those inflow problems. As you mentioned, not only does it affect our system, but it changes the chemistry at our wastewater plant. And it creates difficulties to make sure that we're using the right chemical products to clean up the water.
And I thought we had quite a bit of that information already. We've been talking about this for a long time.
We have some, but I want to make sure that it's all consolidated with some kind of CIP plan.
We've been on the table for a long time.
And the last thing that this has come up recently, there's been discussion again about interconnections between ourselves and Grand County number 1 Park Ranch water systems. I like to call that a water sustainability planning. In other words, how can we make it emergency or some kind of conditions which causes stress on one of the other systems that we can system. And it will probably involve also we're going to be doing a water efficiency plan. The capital that we've got, one of the projects got water efficiency plan will be mostly paid for by Colorado Water Conservancy Board. They typically will pay 20% usually donations from the town for data research. But what that efficiency plan does, you can take for water conservation, which will tie into any kind of drought map that we're doing as well. And we can address water sustainability also during that time. For the capital expenditures, again, we'll be having a work session mainly on capital expenditures. We talked about the $750,000 for community housing. We've got some police vehicles. There's a public works O&M truck, a heavy cat and a haul loader. Paving. Again, the Whistle is crossing. We are looking at playgrounds and so forth in Cousins Ranch open space, about $460,000. That's landscaping between the ponds, production and utilities. Other projects, $805,000 in the water fund. That's water main replacement. System repair and maintenance, $245,000. The soda ash hoppers, well cleaning support. The distribution, $162,000 repairs and hydrant replacements. Other capital projects, sewer line, manhole replacement, the water fund, and $150,000 for sewer system jet video point repairs. So again, all the proposed capital expenditure of $4.7 million. This is a working document. It's a starting point. We have our work sessions. We'll be starting to look at each one of these areas. We have 3 scheduled. We can even do more, or even a retreat if that's what you would like. But I'd like to, and the department heads, we've had a lot of meetings. Last 2 months preparing this document. A lot of discussions and weighing it out, but we've come to the point now where we need your input topics. And you help us define this budget even further. So, you have to answer those.
Can you tell us more about personnel? Then I'm not seeing how we're going to fill these slots.
The challenge we're having is the same as this guy, coffee in the valley. housing. One of the things we are doing, making some renovations to right by the Public Works facility.
On that banner.
Not yet.
Okay.
We've got not the appraisal, we've got the home inspection going out for bids for any kind of the work yet. We would like to be able to use that as a employee housing. So the employee can get in there for about 6 months, ease into the community and give them time to locate. We've discussed incentives. But our the last this year, we're looking to bring in those salaries into range so that we don't want to recruit what Wendy's is willing to pay somebody to flip burgers. But short-term help, some help, especially like in the landscaping. Traditionally, we'll hire them from May through October. It excludes, some of those companies that might be just once the end of August rolls around, they got to leave. Got to find a better solution for seasonal work. Quite frankly, it's not just a problem here. When I was in Wellington, 5 seasonal employees and we could never get employees. We just, at the end of the day, we ended up hiring full-time public works employees, and we had to scale back some of our summer.
Real quick, would the landscaping for the town be considered a community service? Explore that option a little bit.
As far as, as far as liability and I don't know. What you're talking about.
Yeah, and not just for people with the sheriff's department. I'm talking about the schools. I think you need 80 hours of community service to graduate. 40 that are just eased into their senior year that have done nothing yet. Probably
Putting the beds to bed.
yeah, something like that. I mean, wouldn't hurt to advertise at the school or put a flyer out or something. I don't know.
Inmates from the county jail too.
That's what Andy's saying.
That is more difficult.
It is. You need to have the right person lead that.
There's training. I mean, these are, we got to recognize they're fairly professional positions. It's
Absolutely.
not
Yeah.
something you just jump into and know how to do. So if you've got stuff having you train people,
Anyway,
spending
that's-
more time.
Right.
those are good ideas.
Yeah.
Again, there's nothing to approve tonight. This is just a presentation.
Okay.
An idea of where we are and where we're going. Starting in 2 weeks, when we have our first project work session. Any other questions?
Comments, over to us. Yeah. That'd be great.
And, Russell went out some. If there are any of those documents, I think it'd be good to share with us because some of the lines involve one-way streets. I think we were able to get away from.
Do you want those emailed to you, or we just talk about those in one of the book sessions?
Just to see,
Yeah.
Yeah.
What he has
yeah.
on that.
Another thought would be comparing the cost between a crossing or putting that money into a pedestrian. Getting that track safely.
It'd probably be cheaper than a whistleless crossing. too.
I like the train. Whistle.
Yeah.
Two kids. Take a look at that if we're appropriate myself.
That crossing too, which is a whole different scene. I live about a block away like you do, Katie, but also there's also some good studies show it is a harm to kids. They don't sleep as well. and communities that there's some difference in school performance after these. So there's a certain romance to it, but there's not much romance to it in the middle of the night when they decide to sit out there and do switching and go back and forth with the whistles.
Well, it's not like 12 trains are coming through at night anymore.
Right,
Or
exactly.
or traffic is down.
Okay, but we're gonna have that discussion at the next.
Yeah,
budget
yeah,
workshop.
so, yeah, but yeah. just make
Triple
sure.
pane windows in your bedroom.
Closing it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to move into authority meeting. Someone needs to make a motion.
So.
To
Just for the
suspend,
executive session.
oh, yeah,
to
Yeah.
approve the
but to
minutes.
suspend the
Language, sure.
yes, the first half.
From the,
We have to open the meeting.
okay,
So Andy Miller, moved to suspend the trustees meeting and open the housing authority meeting.
Second.
All in favor, I oppose. Okay, we need to approve the minutes of the July 7th meeting, which you all,
Second.
all in favor,
Aye.
opposed? So now.
I moved.
I second. I move to enter into an executive session for the developing strategy for negotiating or instructing negotiators under CRS section 20-402 for position lease, transfer, personal or other reason under CRS section 24-6-402-4A. Property acquisition, including town attorney Kent Whitmer, town manager Ed Cannon, town clerk Antoinette McVeigh, financial general accountant Becky Alice, and marketing communication director Sarah Wick.
So,
Yeah.
Oh, yep, sorry. And Lemieux and Sean Lemieux to be here as well as an attorney.
opposed? Do not have to shut anybody.
So before we close,
So,
So I'll make that motion to come out. Is it?
Yeah.
So I still need to move to come out of the housing authority.
yeah, I
Yeah.
guess so.
Okay,
I guess I thought.
so I, Andy Miller, moved to close the housing authority meeting and continue the board of trustee meeting.
All in favor?
Second.
Oh, second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so now we are at open forum, business that's not on the agenda. And
That's just for the public, right?
so the only,
Just for the
we have
public,
we have McKenna, right?
they have a chocolate.
Raise your hand, McKenna, if you want to speak. Right,
Gotcha. Never know. She might have an opinion one day.
I'm sure she does. Okay, and now we have updates. Antoinette, has the first update.
So the board a while ago asked about, per our conversation regarding mental health, about taxes, if we were able to put tax on tobacco or liquor, and discuss about the marijuana excise tax. So we've done some research on that. So the town board, as far as the tobacco tax goes, each municipality in the state is authorized to levy, collect, enforce, and administer a municipal special sales tax upon all sales of cigarettes, tobacco products, or nicotine products. Now, because it's a tax and it's a Tabor issue, that does have to go to the election of the people, and that would only be an odd numbered years of odd numbered November general elections. So we can do that, and it is a possibility if you guys would want to do that.
After a vote.
After a vote of the people, correct. And then as far as a liquor tax goes, there is nothing in the statutes that allow municipalities to put their own special tax on any sale of any liquor of any kind. So that's a no. And then
So it's not allowed or not?
it's not
facilitated,
allowed.
or-
It's not allowed at all. There's nothing, there's no authority within the state statutes that allow towns to do that. Yeah. And then as far as the marijuana excise tax goes, because we've already gone to the vote of the people, the town has already approved, the electors of the town have already approved the 5% excise tax. The town board can say, we would like to, via a motion and probably a resolution, to put a percentage of that excise tax towards a special fund or account, which could be mental health. So so that does not have to go back to the vote of the people, but the town board could make a motion to do that if you would want to do that. Again, we would do a resolution or even potentially a ordinance to change our code so that's written into the code. I'm not sure which one would be.
Can you tell us what our, without, I know we can't specify where tax comes from, but can we know what our tax revenues from marijuana are at this point, or?
So here's the tricky thing. I'm gonna get a little more into that. So let me, I'm gonna go to that in just a
Okay,
second.
Sure.
So those are our three taxes. Those are the things we can and cannot do with those. So there's a couple of alternatives that we can look at. There's a challenge with assigning a portion of the marijuana excise tax to a specific fund because there's only 2 dispensaries in the town of Fraser right now. The state, we sign an MOU with the Colorado Department of Revenue that says that we will not disclose the specific amount of revenue that the town receives from any industry or business that there are not 3 or more.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah. So because there's only 2, if we would say we're going to put away a percentage of that excise tax, it could allow people in the town to back into that to say, oh, we think this dispensary makes this much and this one makes this much. So that's a challenge. Beth didn't really feel that that would even be an option for us to specifically assign some of that excise tax. But there is another hope still. So within the general fund, there's a fund called the regulated industry. And within this fund, all the revenues for this account come from marijuana excise tax and all of the fees associated with the marijuana and liquor, such as renewals and new application fees. So the board could choose to allocate a portion of this fund to a specific fund, such as mental health. But because this account goes specifically to the general fund, the board could just put a line item specifically to say we want X amount of dollars or percentage to go to mental health from the general fund, since all that money does currently already go to the general funds.
But we'd have to do it without knowing how much is coming into that fund, though? Or-
So Beth did some research on the dollar amounts as to how much money we had received in that fund in the last couple of years, so that you guys could see how much money that actually was. Beth, are you there? Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
I hope you can hear me. My internet's been, I don't know. You guys have been cutting in and out on me a lot. Last year in the revenue we received was close to $238,000 for regulated industries, which made up all the marijuana excise tax, the marijuana tax money that we get from the state, and all the associated liquor licenses and marijuana license fees. And then the state cigarette tax last year, we only got close to like $7,000. So we don't get a lot of revenue from cigarette tax. But you could do like, I don't know, say 20% on like the budget amount. Like this year for that regulated industry, I'm budgeting, or we're budgeting 200,000. So if you did 20%, you could say like, 40,000 is going to be dedicated to a mental health expense account. So that's the thought on trying to come up with a percentage without really letting people back into what the dispensaries are making.
Gotcha.
So Beth or Antoinette, is there any special tax on alcohol at the state level, or?
There's not. So all of the fees and that the state collects actually goes to the old age pension fund for the state of Colorado. So that
And
is
those
where
are just
those.
Relicensing fees, they're not based on sales or anything, so.
No, the sales tax that the state receives, I'm assuming probably goes to like a general fund or whatever, but I'll be honest, I'm not
So,
exactly
in
sure.
the bar, when I buy a beer, I pay sales tax.
Mhm.
That's it.
Mhm.
Okay,
Portion of that sales tax comes back to the municipality.
sure.
Another
Well,
portion
whatever
stays
our
at the
sales
state.
tax is, yeah. Our state sales taxes, not everything else. So, and the information you found on alcohol tax was from the state then, or?
From the state,
Right,
yes,
okay,
yes.
okay. So that would take a legislative effort if we wanted to change that, obviously. So,
Correct.
and our state representative is extremely strong. Judy is extremely strong in the mental health field. It might be a good statewide effort, because it is kind of a real odd thing that we tax marijuana so heavily and we don't tax alcohol other than sales tax. So,
Well, that's because it was a new vice that people could tax higher, so they did it.
I'm sorry.
It was a new vice, so when it came out, the government decided they could tax it higher, so they did.
Sure, but I think we should all recognize, at least I believe that alcohol certainly causes a much larger public impact than marijuana does. I mean, the chief isn't here tonight, but
Well,
Yeah,
I would argue
about
that the mental
88.
health issues happen before they start drinking. They drink and it just makes it worse. So,
What Glenn said was that 80% of our calls are alcohol related.
right.
So
So maybe it should come out of the general fund instead of just taxing the liquor and the.
Well, if drinking is causing 80% of our police budget, isn't there some justice in having that pay for that 80% of that budget?
Well, I mean, so you say a guy had 2 drinks and he gets into a bar fight. Was it the drinks that caused the fight, or was it the guy next to him? These are the reasons we have these weird
Or were
tickets,
they
right?
both- or were they
So,
both drunk?
well,
So I don't know.
I'm just saying, when
It's
you say something causes something, I don't know too many people that get drunk and get into fights. It's usually somebody next to them that says something or does something that causes the fight. So,
Okay, well, anyway, so it would take a legislative effort. Okay,
And the sales tax that the election wouldn't be until November 23 now, right? So that-
22.
No, odd years.
Only an odd year.
Well, I think that we could do it at our general election in April.
Mhm.
That might improve voting.
Yep.
But
And-
again, like that said, we only receive about $6,000-7,000 annually from cigarette sales
Yeah.
tax or tobacco in general.
No,
And they're
no, but-
already so expensive.
Well, but one
I
of the-
know the impacts, I understand,
Yeah,
but it's still.
so you walk into a Summit County store now to buy a pack of cigarettes, and Summit County or the municipality involved levies a $4 a pack sales tax.
Wow.
And these measures do cause a tremendous decrease in teen smoking as it becomes more expensive. So, and again, the impacts that they cause. So anyway,
My challenge with that is if we did it in Fraser, people drive to Winter Park and spend their money
sure, but
there.
it needs to be sold community-wide.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you for that work.
Yeah, thanks
Sounds
very
like-
much.
That was a lot of
Antoinette.
work. to
We'll
do.
look into it. Thank you for your
Yes.
time. Thank you. Welcome.
Okay, the next update is financials.
So we usually just put those in the budget so you guys
Oh,
can see
okay.
them.
Great, thank you.
Can I do a quick update?
Yes.
So Ed and I attended the Northwest TPR, which is the Transportation Planning Region meeting in Steamboat on the 30th. And it was a big prioritization for the next 10 years of projects for CDOT. And of the, 60-ish projects on the list for all of the Northwest TPR, 5 referenced Winter Park and Fraser. And only 2 were budgeted with like actual numbers. One is Red Dirt Hill expansion, which is good. That's a really high priority for Northwest TPR. But the other one was Highway 40 expansion, which was only earmarked for $14 million. And after talking to CDOT, they said it would be at least $42 million to do the project. Basically to make it 4 lanes from Winter Park through Fraser, maybe a little further. So I kind of argued that we could consolidate our projects into basically Red Dirt Hill and Highway 40 expansion. And so they slapped a $42 million number on it, and they put it in the top 5 for projects for CDOT to work on in this Northwest TPR.
So did I see that, Brian, that the passing lanes on 40 north of Kremling were ahead of us though, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think they are. They've been on the list longer. And it's not even passing lanes, it's shoulders.
TPR is Heather from Steamboat.
Mhm.
The vice chair is Chris from Kremling, so.
Yeah,
and
it's
the
no shock.
corridor that runs from
No shock
I-70
that
to Steamboat is just getting way more attention than the traffic counts would show, so I appreciate this, but it is frustrating, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, because all the traffic counts folks show that this is the problem right here. Not anywhere else in the TPR, it's right here. So if you like skateboarding on a highway, use Rabbit Ears, not Bertha, for sure. So Rabbit Ears gets all the pavement. But, yeah. Thanks for your hard effort on this. It's just going to be a slow slog, and that it's just over all the years of the attention to these other projects, it's going to take us several years to get caught up. So
Right. They are talking about federal dollars coming in, so there's potential for more money that's not budgeted. So we can hope for that as well.
I was thrilled to have those arrows painted over on Red Dirt Hill going south or east.
Yeah.
That was in some of the lines on the good.
New passing
There's-
lane,
What?
the new turning lanes and stuff that are on there now, as of like last week or so.
it's a hell of a-
Right. It's still the one down on this end of yeah, well, no, closer.
Indian Peaks.
Yeah, no, one down.
Counter a
Where
five,
the man got killed.
counter a 5, you mean? Or-
Nope.
Belmoritz,
Yeah, don't worry.
Heritage Hill.
No.
Sounds like.
Just gave it 20 questions.
Like,
What's on Eileen's
Yeah,
mind?
just coming over the hill,
Grand
they
Country
turn off
Estates.
into that Lower Highlands,
Grand Country Estates.
Lower Highlands.
Lower Highlands.
That's it. The
Oh, you mean
Lower
the-
Highlands.
You mean the road that goes through somebody's property that's not actually a road? That road, the entrance to the Highlands?
Is it? I don't know that, but just to get on that illegal road. And when
Yeah.
someone tries to turn left, and we all know that, I can't remember the man's name who was killed there last year.
Yep.
That has not been improved yet. But some improvement.
Where are the passing-
Anyone? What?
Oh, sorry, I was like, where are the passing lanes in Kremling that we're talking about?
Oh, my
They're
God.
Kremling
between-
North of Rabbit Ears, so they want to put more passing lanes up that stretch of 40. And
Oh,
there's
like
some need
around-
for that, but the traffic counts aren't near what they are here. so-
Right.
Like
Right.
123?
Put it on the list,
40.
but put it 10 years
Oh.
out.
All along that whole stretch. So
That's a very narrow road, though. That's scary
is.
driving that.
it
Well,
is.
we saw the way the vote was going and we realized that the passing lanes were going to be the top priority.
Yeah.
So, but
Way to
Brian
go.
did make a big case, a good case for Fraser. And we're on that list.
Good job, Ryan.
And the whole point is,
Brian.
Katie, this should all be driven by traffic counts.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
Or dollars that go into a town to pay taxes.
what's that?
I said, or dollars that go into a town to pay taxes.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're up to our second executive session.
Could I do one
Oh.
more update?
Sure.
So municipal league conference, a lot of us attended. It was excellent. The one thing that really jumped out at me, and it's going to take some tough conversations, was the graph shown at the housing meeting with Snowmass. That showed the salaries like this and the housing costs like this. And Snowmass has had a long policy since the 1980s that if you build in Snowmass, anything, residential, commercial,
Right.
anything, you have to bring housing to the table, housing or fees in lieu of. And,
60%
they have a
of the
really-
impact.
Really robust program, and that's where I was talking, that, they in many ways have become landlords, because they have basically what they say, at I think 60% of their employees are housed within Snowmass Village.
I wasn't at
Yeah,
that meeting.
I thought, yeah, that
I
was a
would.
meeting ran so late.
I wasn't at that. session.
Okay, but anyway, but they're housing a large percentage of their employees there, but again, they started in the 1980s. But still, that, to me, the revenue source for housing is going to be the tough discussion. Is it mill levy? Is it fees on developers to increase the cost of housing? And I get that, but the cost of housing, I think, is just gotten to the point where there just has to be some provision made for funding that goes into subsidizing affordable housing. So,
Well, but you gotta do more than just the new development. That's
Yeah.
the problem. We
Yeah,
always say,
transfer
oh,
taxes,
the newest
yeah.
developers, let's charge them for the housing problem.
Yeah.
Been a housing problem from 1970.
Yeah.
So you wanna get people on board, you gotta get everybody on board.
yeah, it's gonna be tough.
Every stakeholder needs to decide they wanna put money into a fund or a system
Yeah.
to build housing. If they're not willing to do it, well,
But what the chart showed was that somehow we have to come up with those funds.
Right.
The market can help with it, but it just is not gonna, it's not profitable to build employee housing. It just isn't. So,
well, California made every single family lot, and multifamily lot throughout the state. That
by
was their answer for
requiring
housing.
a accelerated dwelling unit, right? Yeah. ADU.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, good conference though.
It was. And Katie attended the virtual over the weekend.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay, now are we ready for executive session? Any more updates?
Okay. I move to enter into an executive session for a conference with the town attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions under CRS section 24-64024B and for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations and or instructing negotiators under CRS section 24-64024E regarding litigation, including town manager Ed Cannon, Allison, and marketing communications director, town planner Catherine Trotter, former town attorney Rod McGowan, and attorney Sean Lemieux.
Good job. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We
So-
typically do a speech at this time saying that.
Because it would not be recorded.
Right.
So it's my opinion that the topic discussed in this executive session will be protected by attorney-client privilege. It must not need to be recorded.
So I move we come out of executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Can't use my, that's my job. Every once in a while,